Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on 100.5 and 790 News Radio WSGW and online at WSGW.com. Here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. All right, I am excited to be here with you. We are actually recording at another time than we normally would be here, and we're doing things a little bit differently than we have before. So we're here. Normally, you might catch me around 1 p.m. doing our live recording broadcast, and then we would air the show on Sundays at 7 p.m. But this time we're doing something a little different. We're here on Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. ish. Sometimes it's the craziest thing when you're in a hurry and you run in the house and you forget something, you cannot find those darn keys. But I was able to find my keys, and thank God I made it here. We have with us sitting in today as producer, Chandler. Chandler, why don't you just say a little bit, let people know who you are and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm Chandler Pulaski. I've been working here at WSGW as a board operator for the last few months, and this week they told me that you needed somebody to run the board for you and produce the show. So
Chandler's here, and it was funny because Chandler has been like real cool. And as soon as he got on the radio, he was like, "Yes, I'm Chandler Pulaski."
Oh yeah.
So it's good to have you here, Chandler. Great to have you in there. And so we're going to be doing something just a little bit different here. We're going to see how things shake out. So I want to thank you guys for your patience, and hopefully you continue to listen. Hopefully this time that we're doing our live social media engagement works better for most of you that are out there listening, and you're tuned in and ready for a good conversation. Today, we're going to have a conversation on gun violence in America. We're going to talk about this just a little bit, and we're going to really kind of tune in what happened in Michigan because of what took place at Oxford High School. And I often start this show off by talking about what's on my mind or, what's hot off the press. And so today we're going to talk about both of those things, what's on my mind and what's hot off the press all at one time. So today we're going to open up with what we're going to be really talking about, which is the shooting that took place at Oxford High School in the Metro Detroit area. Currently 4 individuals dead and 7 wounded. It's been horrific seeing the families. I watched Chandler, one of the students, it was an African-American male that they were recording. I think it was maybe on CNN or I don't know what show it was. But they were recording this family, and he was just saying how one of the individuals that were gunned down was his friend. And in the midst of his interview, he received notice that one of the other individuals that had been severely wounded and gone to the hospital had actually died. And just the pain and the anguish and seeing the look and the pain, he was like, and I could hear him voice, "That was my friend. He was one of my closest friends. We went to his house and ate dinner every day before we had our football game the next day." This type of thing is becoming so prevalent. It's something that used to happen, every so many years we would see this happening. And I don't know if it's just that America's becoming more violent or what the issue is, but we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So Ethan Crumbley, number 15 years old, went in and he shot with his new Christmas gift. And I want to talk a little bit about, I don't know if you follow this show, Chandler, at all. A little bit. Okay. I said show this issue, but what's really interesting to me is Ethan Crumbley, who is 15 years old, is given this gift from his parents, a handgun by his parents, for Christmas, an early Christmas gift. He was there at the store when they purchased this for him. And he was really excited about having this handgun. Now, before we start this conversation, this isn't, I know a lot of parents have done things like this. They've bought their kids guns, you go hunting. I've never really seen a parent buying a kid a handgun or anything like that. But this kid has this gun. He gets this gun. And once he gets this gun, he's online searching for ammunition. which I guess, it's not so far-fetched. Okay, you get a new gun for Christmas. You're excited about the gift. And so when you have time and you're on your phone, you're searching for ammunition because you're excited about this new gift, this new toy. That's not so far-fetched from me. But what happens is it would appear that as this whole scene plays out, that the parents are made aware because on 2 different occasions, school administrators and staff have said, hey, there's some issues here. We see this letter here. There's this imagery, this picture. They called the parents in, and it appears that the parents were more upset that their day was interrupted, and you need to take your son home. What are we going to do with him? We got to go back to work. He's going to stay here. That was my number one issue. I did also wonder, why were the authorities not, contacted if there was a real fear and a threat of the violence that would take place. But I guess, we're in so many times schools react to how parents respond. If a parent comes in and they make enough noise, they raise enough cane, then the school tends to listen to what that parent does and like, okay, we'll just let them stay in for the remainder of the day. And I know that right now their ideas and their thoughts concerning that decision probably are, they wish they had made a different decision. So anyways, we understand what takes place. Kids are shot. These things happen. But it's going to be kind of interesting because this is the first time, and I've said this a number of times, Chandler, that I thought that parents should bear some of the responsibility when these types of things happen in our schools. What are your thoughts about something like that?
Well, they did purchase the gun for him, and as a Christmas gift, he probably shouldn't have had access to it until Christmas.
It's only December. What? It's the end of November. I mean, come on. So
that's part of the problem, definitely.
But so when I look at this, my thought has long been that I thought the parents should bear some responsibility when these types of things happen. Especially especially in this situation, because the parents were the ones that given him access to this gun. The kids will do things, and when people, when there's a will, there's a way. We've heard that saying before, and so we've seen kids, get guns from friends or steal guns from other places. But in this particular situation, the parents were the ones who put the gun in his possession. And so it was interesting because we see for the first time, I think this is the first time I've ever seen this, where the parents are actually in jeopardy of being charged. I think it was involuntary manslaughter is what they're being charged with. And this whole fiasco of them preparing to turn themselves in, and notice I use the air quotes.
Yes.
They were preparing while they were in an abandoned building that they thought no one saw them. However, someone saw their vehicle and turned it in because they were wanted all the way across the country, knowing that they had, taken $4,000 out, hiding in a building. Does that sound like someone who is getting ready to turn themselves in?
It definitely sounds like a guilty conscience.
It sounds like some people like, listen, I'm going to go before the popo come get me. We're not playing that game. But anyways, so I'm glad that they are caught. I stand with this. I think it's Oakland County, their prosecutor, in, making the decision to charge them now. It is going to be a real challenge because there has never been a precedence for this type of thing taking place before. So I'm kind of excited that hopefully more parents are going to take the responsibility of making sure that guns are locked up, making sure that young people don't have access unless it's time for them to use it, for a camping trip, hunting trip, or whatever it is they're going to do. But there has to be some responsibility taken. And now we have, which is a sad story to me because I think, I'm wondering, I think the kid had some mental issues, but it seems like this mom and dad aren't wrapped too tight either. And so I'm hoping that we get to the bottom of what takes place here, what has taken place here. And my hope is, and this is something that never happens, that we really lean in for our kids. It's interesting because I've seen so many people, and we've all seen those Feed a Hungry Child. Was it Sally Struthers or somebody way back in the day that used to have the thing about, saving a dog? And she used to talk about, saving kids and feeding kids. You guys are way too young for this. But I think it was Sally Struthers, and I may be wrong, but I was a kid myself when this was happening. But she would, they would show the pictures of the little children in Africa with the bloated stomach from being malnourished. And America's hearts would break. Our hearts would break because we're like, why should a child ever live in that kind of pain? No child should have to be hungry. And we were moved with compassion because of the images that we were seeing. But it's interesting to me now that with everything that's going on, we're not seeing that same kind of compassion as it relates to our young kids. Our kids are being traumatized by the things that was going on. This is interesting, and I'm going to get off my soapbox in a minute, or maybe not. I may continue on this one, but I work with a group of kids. I have a group of a program that's, and we've talked about this before. It's called Dow Treasure Academy. So I have 20 kids that I'm working with. They're all ninth graders, and we're tracking them for, from ninth grade through 12th grade, and you're trying to find opportunities for scholarships and all of these other things. And while I'm working with these kids, and this came up today, we met this afternoon. I'm working with these kids, and someone brought up the fact, we were talking about how can we make an impact. And they were like, you know what, why don't we do something about gun violence? I said, why would you guys choose gun violence? And they were like, because it's the thing that affects all of us. And so I have a room of ninth graders that are all saying, hey, listen, we need to do something about gun violence. Like, what do you want to do? Why do you think it's important? They said, because so many of our young people are being killed. Like, look what happened in Oxford, and they bring it up. So we begin this conversation, and I said, so how does it make you feel when you see this happen? And, this happened in Sandy Hook, this happened in this school, this happening in Columbine, this happened here. And they were like, it just makes us feel like no one is paying attention to the fact that we're scared as heck that all of these guns and these things are happening. And we're afraid that we could go to school at any day and someone show up and just blow us away. So I asked the question, I said, and I should have had one of those young people come on the show, and maybe we'll do that in the future. So I asked the question, like, what is it that you expect to be done about these things? They said, well, they say that Instagram and Snapchat are destroying young women. And so what are they doing? They're going to Congress and they're lobbying and they're making changes to how people are using Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook. And they said, they say that, all of these different things, all these protections for everything else. But they said, then why won't they have those same types of protections for us when it comes to guns? And so, far be it from me, these ninth graders are actually making sense. Here's the thing: if we can spend,
smart kids,
very smart. If we can spend all of this time and we see them on, saying that they want to take away our Snapchat and our Instagram because one of them said because they said something about it challenges us or it corrupts how we view our bodies. Young girls view our bodies, and that they were using it for portals to get drugs online. So they want to put all of these protections in, but they won't protect us from the thing that literally kills us, which is guns in school. And could you imagine? I was kind of sitting there like, wow. So they begin to talk about how they can begin to make change in their community. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because they were like, we want our community to listen to us. They said, they never listen to us. They never pay attention to us. And they said, and, if it's a school board, the school board listens to the government. The school board listens to our parents. The school board listens to companies. The school board, and they just said, but the school board, if they're there for the schools, then they should be willing to listen to the students. I said, so what are you saying? You're taking a hostile takeover? You want a school board? But they were saying, I think that we should have a school board meeting. And I thought this was amazing, where the school listens to our concerns, and we have a real concern about gun violence. Now, I do want to make sure that you're aware, this was a group of Black and brown kids that are in the inner city here in the city of Saginaw. And the city of Saginaw is no stranger to everything that's going on in our community. But we're going to come back to that in just one second. I want to switch topics real quick, because we're going to talk about, that's going to be our conversation, the gun violence that we see taking place, not only in our schools, but in our communities and our just all over the place. It's crazy. Omicron, is that Omicron?
Yeah.
Well, how do we pronounce this? Is it Omicron or
I
Omicron?
believe it is. I have to read it. As soon as I read it, I'll know. Omicron.
Omicron. Okay.
Omicron.
Every time I hear this, I think about Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Comic-Con. And, I'm like, are we, okay, this is something different. I went to Comic-Con. This is something completely different. And we haven't, so Rick, why are you waving your head like that?
I'm just watching.
So Omicron is, well, I went to Comic-Con, and it was something that was very different than I've ever been to in my life. As a Black man, we don't see too many Black folks dressing up in characters, running around and acting out scenes. So it was a very interesting thing to see. I think it was down in like the Royal Oak area. and it was really cool. It was a cool experience. I enjoyed myself thoroughly. Probably I won't do it again, but I thought I saw how people could find that. And yeah, it's not my thing. It's not my thing. Men in tights belong on TV. Okay. But anyways, so Omicron is a real thing. It is here. And there was this travel ban, and I never believed, just like many people are saying, that travel bans work. By the time we find out that something's here, it's like the movie Enemy of the State back in the 80s or the 90s or whatever. By the time that thing hit the show, the TV, the movie screens, they were already looking for Osama bin Laden under the ground, via satellite. And so this technology is old. I always say that film often mirrors real life by about 15 years difference. But Omicron's here. I figured that it would be here. It's in every state of the union. I don't even know where we're playing these games. It's everywhere. But the fact of the matter is, we have to, as a community, come together. There's so many wars that we're fighting and so many battles that are happening out there. But this COVID situation is not going anywhere. I heard something today that said that it's believed that Omicron may be a bit more contagious than the Delta variant. However, their initial thoughts are maybe it is not as virulent as it doesn't cause the level of sickness. But if we have it in the air and there's more of it there, then it could cause sickness. Now, the thing that was kind of crazy was that they were saying, when they were looking at it for the Pfizer vaccination, which is the one that I have, the Pfizer vaccination, of course, it would be my vaccine, that it has the ability to elude the vaccination if you are fully vaccinated. That means you're 1 and 2 dose. However, if you have been boosted, that booster gives you, I guess, a 40% more efficiency in terms of fighting it off. And it adds a level of protection that's important. Now, I'm going to tell you, when they first came out with this thing, I'm like, you ain't shooting me up with something y'all done created in a year. That's my stance. It ain't happening, okay? And then I just began to look, and my parents and folks that were around me that were seniors, they were like, we're kind of concerned about this. And so I had to start looking at the science of this. And me coming from a place, bachelor's, master's degree of physiology, study of the human body, med school guy, I said, I need to take a look at this. And so we started looking at this and looking at what a lot of these virologists and the immunologists were doing and coming up. And so I changed my tune a bit, understanding that this was an mRNA virus, which is not something brand new. We've been dealing with these things forever, and so I looked at that. I changed my tune. I got vaccinated. I actually became the community vaccination the vaccination liaison for communities of color. And I jumped on board. And so I started helping, those who were, I think at the time it was 80 and older, 85 or 65 and older, get vaccinated. And it was really cool. It was a cool opportunity to be able to help our community. But then it just, we went through that. Then they were like, now you got to get this booster. And for some reason, I was excited about the booster. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get a booster. I don't know. It sounded like a superpower. I'm now going to get my Pfizer booster.
Extra hit points.
Extra hit points, right. And so I was like, okay, this is cool. However, there are a lot of people who have fought against their own personal feelings. And there's a lot of people who have been mandated to take a vaccine. And I'm not one who believes that anyone should be mandated to do anything. I'm not that kind of person. I believe in our freedoms, just as I'm a pro-lifer all day long. I believe in the right to life. However, I'm not going to sit there and tell someone that they need to do something different with how they live their life, because people are going to do what they want to do anyways. We've banned it, and what they do, they go backwoods and use hangers and get abortions and all of these crazy things anyway. So people have a right to do what they want with their bodies. I believe that about, in terms of a woman's right to choose. And I believe that about this particular virus. I don't think anyone should be forced to do anything. You should have control over your soma, your person. And so I'm looking at that. And now, if you notice, Chandler, the idea or the concept of what is fully vaccinated is slowly changing. I don't know if you've noticed that. Have you taken note of that?
I don't know about that. I understand that now people are becoming more aware that booster shots are a thing.
Okay, so a very real thing.
Yeah.
Now the 2 shots don't work. Now you got to get a 3rd shot. This is not your desire. It's something that you did against your will, maybe to keep your job, to stay employed. And now they're saying, the first 2 were, hey, it was just a test. This is the real thing. So I can understand the angst that many people are feeling. I can understand the fact that there are many people who were afraid and they took the first 2 shots. But I have a lot of people telling me that they're not getting this booster. I don't know what that means in terms of the strength of our community, in terms of us being safe, and if this is going to make us more vulnerable, because people are just kind of over it. We have mitigation fatigue. I know I came in with a mask. I wear a mask. My mom, it has no spleen, so she is challenged in terms of her ability to fight off disease. My brother is diabetic, which makes him at higher risk. So they're fully vaccinated. So I did it because of those people that I love and their fears. But I don't know if I could continue. Does that mean that 3 months down the road, I have to have another vaccination? I mean, at some point, I'm not a medicine person. The most I take in terms of medicine, Chandler, is an aspirin. So how are you feeling about this? Does it seem like there's going to be a continual need for more shots?
Well, as I understand it, it's somewhat the same thing with the flu. Ideally, you get a flu booster shot yearly because it allows your body to become more adapted for whatever variations come with the next flu, because it is always, even the regular flu is always changing.
There's a strain that changes, right?
To better attack you. So as far as this goes, I treat it just like a flu shot. If you just got your Pfizer shot, you're fine. I'd wait a little bit, but like as far as this goes, I got my Pfizer right away.
Yep.
And I'm way past due. In fact, I got COVID a couple of months ago
After having your shot.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm kind of thankful for that. I understand young people, like not as many young people are dying of it, but I am here to say it hurt a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know what it would have been like without the shot. Maybe it would have still hurt.
What were
the
your
same.
experiences? Because I've met most young people that I know that have have gotten it have had very mild symptoms. No one that has been extremely sick. You're saying that it hurt. I haven't heard. They were like, it was just a cough. We got over it and we're good.
Oh,
So what was your thought? I mean, what was going on with you?
Coughing, intense chest pains, swinging, like my fever would rise exponentially, and then it would just drop. I would go from burning up to freezing within minutes, and it was like that for as far as I understand, actually being sick. It was probably for about 4 days I was like that.
Man, I am a wimp when it comes to being sick. So I tip my hat. Well, the good thing about it is that once you do get sick, there is
You get
antibodies, right?
and things like that.
So you have additional immune support there. So I want to hopefully that gets well. So what are you thinking about the booster? Have you been boosted, or are you planning on being boosted?
I would like to get a booster shot, but I've been putting it off because I'm bad at health.
Wow. Well, we're here, and we're going to get into the meat of our conversation on the other side of this commercial break. I do want to say that it looks like the Congress is going to do something in terms of censure or stripping Republican Lauren Boebert from her duties after this Muslim hate speech that's going on here. But hey, lighter things are coming. It is Christmas time. Santa is on his way. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. We'll be back more of this conversation. United Shades of Gray. We're going to talk about gun violence in Michigan and in America. So stay tuned for more of this conversation. Thank you. All right, so guys, we're taking a quick commercial break. We'll be back in just a quick second. For those of you who are listening, we want you to tune in. This is not the conclusion of our show. We have the second part of our show where we're going to really lock into the conversation about what took place at Oxford High School with Mr. Crumbly and his family and his shooting spree. And we're going to talk about, how can we begin to make some changes take place in our community, and what is the most important thing? And this becomes the essential question that I'll begin to ask, like, what is most essential, our rights to bear arm or the safety of our children? And that becomes the ultimate question that we have to begin to ask. And does one impact the other, or does one outweigh the other? So we're going to have that conversation in just a quick second.
You're listening to United Shades of Grey on WSGW.
Hello, this is Kareem, and we are back with more United Shades of Grey, conversations of race in America. Even though today's conversation is not so much about race, however, we're going to really kind of talk about it because it's interesting that there seems to be a great divide in terms of how we see gun violence when we look at the races, when we look at white America and black America. There's a great gulf between us in terms of how we see a need for additional changes to our gun laws and screenings and things of that nature. But I want to just begin, because our hearts are with the parents of those 4 students slain last Tuesday in Oxford. It is definitely a hell that no parent should have to endure. And with 7 others wounded in the same attack, we pray for a swift and full recovery for those other students. We sympathize as well with the parents who felt death brushed past their children, with teachers who prayed they'd never stand between the young in charges of murder, with hundreds of Oxford High School students whose hopes, I just sat there and the images of them running and jumping out of the windows and actually having to put into play their safety plans. I mean, I can't imagine. Can you imagine when you were in high school, Chandler, being in a situation? First of all, we didn't have these safety protocols for gun violence when I was a kid, when I was in high school.
That's the thing. It's when I was growing up, those were in their infancy. They were getting started. And it was a scary thing to think about when what they would do, at least out in my kind of country school.
Where'd you go to school?
Cass City.
Okay. Yeah, a little bit of country.
A little bit of country. But they would bring... Thankfully, you had an idea if you were not paying attention in class and you were looking out the window, you had an idea that there was a drill coming, because the police would usually show up, and what they would do is they would call a lockdown, which I don't think would actually happen in the case of an actual lockdown. They might not call it. That's something I'm actually curious about now that I say it. I'd love to know if they actually called a lockdown in this situation. But they would call a lockdown, and you would get into positions in class, and it was a freaky thing to be totally silent and hear those footsteps coming down the hall. So we had probably only the vaguest idea of what it was actually like, and I don't wish for the actual idea on anybody, like the actual experience.
Yeah, Rick, I want to thank you for putting a camera on the guy so that he's not the ghost in the room, and I'm just talking to this and this fictitious voice that happens to respond whenever something happens. So thanks for that. This is Chandler. For those of you who are listening, Chandler Pulaski, right? Did I get it right? Yeah. All right. See, I can hit the ski names as well. Okay. I can do the skis. I can do the CZYs. Go ahead.
You pronounced it right the second time you tried to say it, which is more than A lot of people.
Most people can say.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I've got a little bit of, but it's interesting, as I hear you talk about that, Chandler, and you're a few years younger than me. And I happen to be the more mature voice in the room for today. This is quite interesting. But I remember growing up and the things that we did for drills, we never had conversations about gun violence. We never had, active shooter training. And this is what you do with someone. We never, I don't ever even remember it being discussed. We had tornado drills. This is what you do if there is a tornado and the alarm would go off. This is what you do if there's a fire. And so these were those real life emergencies that you could not control, that if they happen, they just kind of happen. But active shooter, I just can't even begin to fathom the additional stress that our young people must be under when they have to even just begin to prepare for these things. And then to actually have to, in a moment of crisis, and this is what's so crazy and why I say our children are so brave and resilient, because in a moment of crisis, these young people actually pulled back all of that training, and we saw them actually, they barricaded the door. He was trying, on one video, you could see Crumbly trying to get into one of the rooms and talk, hey, let me in, this is the authority. And they were not letting him in. And then they actively, went out the emergency window, ran, and did not stop running. And so when I see this, it's absolutely crazy that our young people have come to this place, that this is the new normal, that this is how we're living. So when we look at this, we know that some people will say that nothing can be done to prevent such attacks like what happened in Oakland County. The officials there report that Crumbly's parents met with school administrators, as we were saying, over the boys' classroom behavior just hours before the attack. That's what's crazy. We are here. The administrators recognize that we're in crisis. The teacher recognizes that we're in crisis. They communicate that to the parents, and the parents are tweeting the kid like, you got to learn how not to get caught.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when we think about this, and I say this all the time, we have to really begin to understand that mental health is wealth. We talk about health as wealth, but mental health is so vitally important. And our children are suffering from so much trauma. And we're seeing this, I think, even play out. And I'm not sure what impact. And I think this kid has some emotional issues that are going on here. When you begin to think about, the types of things that were going on in his life, there was definitely a need for some emotional counseling and some intervention there. But when I look at what's happening around the world, our children they've been locked up like guinea pigs for a year, 18, 16 months. I have students that are currently right now afraid to be around other students because they don't want to get sick and take it back home to their grandparents. Especially working with inner city youth in the city of Saginaw, these kids are bombarded, sometimes. And I live in the township, but I can hear, gunfire going. I'm like, what in the heck is going on? And then you'll get the call, hey, this is happening, on the west side of the city of Saginaw. It used to be a time when violence happened only in certain places. And now we're seeing this happen all over the place. There's no place that is removed from what's taking place as it relates to this gun violence. And so I just want to say, there are hundreds of millions of firearms out there. There are people. This is what someone said. One of the kids, and I want to say this, Chandler, I go back to the kid that I was having the conversation with this afternoon. We meet between 3:30 and 5:30. And they said, why can't we just take all the guns away, from everyone? And I laughed. I was like, because, the Second Amendment, it's a history lesson, but this is real life where they are. And they say, it doesn't matter because they're not going to let us take them. I said, well, the Second Amendment gives us the right to bear arms. It is a constitutional right for us to bear arms. And for those of you who are listening to this conversation, like, oh, he's a left-wing liberal and he wants to take our guns, you could be no further from the truth. I have a number of guns. I enjoyed that. I grew up in the country, shooting, at cans initially, and then we would go squirrel hunting and all of those other things. So I enjoy going to the range. I enjoy having fun. I am licensed to carry. So I have it used to be a CCW. Now it's a CPL concealed weapons permit or whatever. So I have all of those things. However, I come to a point in my life when I have kids that are looking at me like, Mr. Bowen, why can't we do something about these guns? That I have to realize, there is a real need for us to really consider what is the reason that we have so many guns. America leads the world in gun violence, and we have more guns in the hands of everyday citizens than we do anywhere else. And when we look at how we started the fabric of our nation, the right to bear arms, and really, I think, what does that really mean? When you hear that, the right to bear arms, Chandler, and I know that you didn't sign up for a history lesson today or civics lessons, but when you hear that, what does that mean to you when they say that we have a right to bear arms?
To me, it's a right to take up weapons to defend yourself in certain scenarios. As far as the Constitution goes, I believe that does include guns, but it also includes other weapons too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So my thought is this, right? It's not just about guns. Absolutely. Right. It's about the right for one to protect their home, their possessions, their family, the things that they love. And we have taken that amendment and we've made that amendment. We have the right to create a militia. We have the right to have so many guns that we can protect the whole. How many guns does it really require for you to protect your family? And so that's a whole conversation. I know there are a lot of people that, as some liberals have said, you talk to those Republicans, they cling to their guns. But at what point do we do that at the detriment of our children? And so that becomes the conversation that I would be so willing to have. Do you love your guns more than you love the safety of your children? And we're not saying take the guns away. I'm simply saying let's put some things into place so that we can be safer as we handle the thing that we enjoy, which is being able to hold our guns. Now, I'll tell you, when I was at Michigan State University, at MSU, this was the craziest thing in the world to me, and I don't know if it's still in practice right now. But at MSU, because we were college students, we were over 17, students could actually bring their rifles up. And, they would, check them in with DPS, let DPS know that they had these guns, and they would hold these guns at the residence hall, if you were planning to go up and go hunting with your family. Is this something that they're still doing? Are colleges?
I went to SVSU, so as far as I'm aware, no, not over there, but that does strike me as an MSU thing that would happen, but I can't imagine it's still happening.
Because there was a little situation that they had an active shooter on campus not too long ago. But when I look at this, I'm sitting there like, this is absolutely crazy. Like, I could not believe that they would allow kids to bring up rifles to campus. I don't care for what purpose it is. And so for me, as a Black man that grew up in the city of Saginaw, now I grew up in the city of Saginaw. I grew up in a time when there was a lot of gun violence and gang violence that was happening in the community. There were gangs like the Crazy Eights and the Cliques and the Sixth Street. There was a Sixth Street Mafia and the Folks and all of these different gangs that were going on. And it was a part of the reason there were so many issues that were happening at the Saginaw Fairground. One of the reasons why they put it all the way out in Chesney, like, we move it out here and we ain't gonna have no violence. You're right, because I'm not coming all the way out there. But anyways, I saw those things happen, and there was a great concern. You couldn't go out and have a good time because so many things were happening. And I would ask myself the question, like, what in the world is going on here? And then, there was a secession or a falling back away from those things. And now we see a return and a resurgence of what's taking place in our communities in a way that I can't even begin to understand. But I do want to say this, that I think that there are some sensible measures that states and federal lawmakers can adopt without risk of violating anyone's constitutional rights. We understand that talking about any changes to the Second Amendment is almost like talking about God to some individuals. And if they have the courage to face down these manufacturers and Second Amendment abolitionists who call the gun lobbies tune, we can't guarantee that any of them will dramatically reduce gun deaths. But this is the thing. Not doing anything hasn't changed much either. And so I think that we should take a look at this and have a comprehensive approach. Gun violence has a three-prong view from my perspective. We're going to look at high-profile massacres, which is what we see with what took place in Oxford, what we saw with Sandy Hook, what we saw years ago in Columbine. What was the name? Do you guys know what the name of the massacre or the shooting was down in Florida? I can't remember the name of that school down in Florida that had that huge gun violence, probably about 5 or 6 years ago now. But when we look at those high profile massacres are one of the things that we should look at. But then we also have to look at the shootings that occurred that are in relation to crime, such as gang violence. And I would also include drugs in there. And then thirdly, the issues of suicide. Yes.
That was Marjorie, what was it?
Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in Parkland.
Parkland
was
school,
specifically
Parkland
what
schools.
they were calling it.
Yeah, Parkland school shootings. And so those types of, so we have those high profile massacres. And that's what we're calling. We've had more massacres or shooting sprees that have happened in the United States with high schools than we ever have before this year. So we have those high profile crimes, and we have those crimes that are associated with, I would say, the underworld, the crime, gangs, drugs, those kinds of things. And then we have another issue that is very important, which is suicide. And the issue of suicide is something that is very that I can relate to. I remember there was a young mentee that I had. He was 18 years old. His name was Jonathan Norman. We called him J Norm. He was an outstanding football player here in the city of Saginaw at Saginaw High School. And this young man was with some friends, and it is so crazy because I can remember this like it was yesterday. This young man was with some friends. It was the 4th of July. He was visiting another family friend, and they were just kind of having fun, and they got a hold of a gun. I don't know if the gun was in the group or if there was a family member's gun or whatever it was. And this young man was kind of depressed, and he was just kind of talking, well, what would you guys do if I would just pull the trigger and kill myself? Now, his younger brother was there doing this process, and they're playing, they're just talking, and they're thinking, oh, he's just talking, And before you know it, all of the other kids were in the other room. They hear the gun go off. They come over, and Jonathan Norman, he had blown his brains out. And I look at, that scenario, and I look at the fact that this is, we look at what happens with these mass murders, but gun violence, like violence by suicide with gun, is another issue, one of the biggest issues for young people in terms of how they kill themselves. And so we've got to begin to do some things that are a little bit different. I can never forget that. I got a call when I got to the house. The police were there. It was just a whole scenario. But talking with those young kids who found him there, who ran back around the corner to the other room and saw their brother, their best friend, with pieces of his brain matter splattered all over the place, was such a traumatic experience. Now, did these kids even get the type of support that they needed to deal from that type of trauma? No. And even when we look at what's happening in Oxford, they'll bring in a counselor and he'll talk to the kids in some group, and it'll be an emotional moment. They'll share a few words, and then we force our kids on to the next tragedy without really dealing with those issues and really dealing with the thing that causes them the most frustration, which is how can we go to school and successfully complete our education when we don't even feel safe. When you grew up in school, did you ever think that being harmed in school was even a thing, an opportunity or an option?
Beyond fights and things like that, not really over in Cass City. It wasn't, I mean, over there, you were talking about that situation with MSU. It made me think of, in Cass City, it used to be the norm that kids would bring their guns to school because they were just coming back from hunting in the mornings. So like they'd have their guns out in their trucks or in their cars or whatever.
That's crazy.
And I feel like it was towards the end of, I don't know if I have to double check on this, but I think they asked people to stop doing that just for this, because,
I
safety.
mean, how could we? I didn't understand in the beginning, but hopefully there has been a change. But when I think about growing up, and the thing that was so amazing about being a young person in the Saginaw community, even though we had bullies and we had people that would pick on, being kids, and now bullying is a really big thing, and they got all of these public service announcements about bullying, and I don't take anything from that, but we don't have that same type of passion towards guns in our community and gun violence and young people. Bullying is bad. And, if you're bullying now, that is one of those, we talk about cancel cultures. You get canceled, take him off of this. He shouldn't be a part of this because he's a bully. But, even when we lock up a kid who goes to, we're locking up babies, young kids who are having issues that really should be protected, from themselves in these moments. And our kids are not receiving the kind of real immersive counseling that is necessary to really deal with the trauma that we're experiencing. And because America, our country, because Michigan, we're becoming so desensitized to these types of things that we hurt. We mourn for 3 or 4 days. There's a funeral. It's a hot topic for a little while. And then we resort and return back to our corners. We retreat back to the corners without anything really meaningful taking place. All right. I want us to start with Michigan. More than 1,200 people die and more than 3,500 are wounded by handguns each year right here in Michigan, according to the gun reform advocacy group, Everytown for Gun Safety. Most of those are fatalities and suicides. A gun is the second leading cause of death among children and teens. 89 die average each year. More than half of youthful gun deaths are homicides. You understand this? Michigan's figures roughly track national averages, so we're right behind the national averages. There have been 29 gun-related injuries or deaths on American school grounds this year. 29. I feel like Susan Powder, the fitness person, stop the madness, and she said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Come on, Michigan. Come on, America. We are much better than this. We've got to begin to stop the madness. If we don't begin to realize that there has to be a change to how we're seeing guns and how guns are playing a role in our community, then we are absolutely in for more devastating things than this taking place. All right. So I want us to make sure that we took a look at this. Guns are the leading cause with 89 deaths each year. That's the average. 89 people die. I don't even know 89 people who die from other things like cancer and other sickness. I'm sure there's, there's a lot of them out there, but 89 people, kids, teens die from gun violence. So we want you to begin to understand that poll after poll confirms that Michiganders support for prohibiting guns in schools, daycares, centers, and churches, and enacting red flag laws that would keep guns out of the hands of people who pose an imminent threat to themselves and others. These numbers are continually popular with people. So let me ask this question to you, Chandler. If the public sees these things as highly popular, why are we not enacting laws to make changes take place?
That's a very good question. I think it's a definitely a complicated issue, though, and people do have their reasons.
What's complicated about it? Help me understand what's complicated.
Well, people like I feel like no matter what, depending on what political side you take, it's all or nothing. It's if you swing conservative, the idea is definitely, well, we're going to lose our guns or we're going to keep our guns, and if you swing the other way, it definitely seems to come across that way.
But that's exactly my question. And that's the reason why I think we should have this conversation. Why does it have to be all or nothing? Why can't we have our guns and have the right to bear arms and have the freedom to hunt and do all the things that people love to do, but yet still take precautions that are necessary to protect the things? Our children are our most valuable thing that we have on the planet, hopefully for some people. But it appears that we don't have the gall to say, listen, I love my gun, but I love my children more. And a part of that problem is because when we look at those statistics, as we talked about, 89 kids dying a year, most of these things take place in urban America. So when we talk about the differences in opinion and how we see things differently, it often has to come because we see things through a lens based upon the environment in which we live. We're not seeing suburban America having the issues with gun violence. So people say, okay, it's because the people in the city are more violent. It's not just about being more violent, because if we were look at those numbers, and I've said this before, that middle-aged white men tend to be more violent based upon statistics. But there are other issues. There's the issue of lack of resources. There's the issue that people are living more closely together and tensions run higher. So we've got to begin to do what is necessary to make an impact in our community. Either we love our guns or we love our kids. But can't we love our guns while we love our kids? I want you guys to continue this conversation. Thank you all for tuning in. Those of you who are listening in replay, you can tune in next week. Same time, same bad channel. Thank you. This is Kareem signing off with United Shades of Gray.